We have new resignation programs being rolled out for federal workers, and the media typically refers to it as a buyout program, but it doesn't put cash in your hand. Instead, it places you on administrative leave, and you continue to get paid for a series of months. So this is being handled differently by individual federal agencies. Let's get into it. We have over 400 federal agencies in the federal government, and pretty much all of them have been announcing workforce cuts, contract cuts. And this is going to be the trend for the next couple of years coming from the current president's administration. This is the direction they want to head down. Now, one of the issues with this is really the leadership. The top part of these federal agencies, they're not being very transparent when it comes to the reduction in force, when it comes to who the cuts will impact. So first up, we have the GSA. If you don't know, GSA is essentially the landlord of the federal government. They're the supply guy. They buy supplies in bulk. So an email went out on Friday that said the DRP program is open. That's the Deferred Resignation Program. In addition to that, they're extending the early retirement, which is VERA, and they also have the VSIP, the separation incentive payments. So all three of those are uniquely different. Now with the DRP, that was initially rolled out in February across the entire federal government. So GSA, along with some other agencies we'll get into in a little bit, they're doing their own version of the Deferred Resignation Program. Now, you're still going to be able to get paid and you're going to get your benefits to include leave accrual all the way up until September 30th. For all three of these programs, GSA employees, they have to make a decision by April 18th. If they take the early retirement or the incentive payment, which is $25,000, they're going to be gone on May 3rd. Looking at the Deferred Resignation Program, it was a better deal to take it back in February. Because this is the same deal, they're going to short you by 2 months. The original Deferred Resignation Program, or DRP, 75,000 federal employees took it, but many more thousands wanted to take it, but they were waiting at the last minute for the federal judge to make a decision. They were struggling whether it was legitimate or not. We know now that federal employees who took it back in February, they've been getting paid. They've already received their second paycheck. Interestingly, with GSA, they're open to considering allowing you to get pay and benefits all the way to December for retirement purposes. So that could potentially allow more people to consider it. And they want to encourage people to take these through avenues because based on how many people take it, whether it's the immediate retirement, whether it's the incentive pay or the deferred resignation, that is going to allow the RIFs to impact less people. So you're allowing individuals to self-select, to go ahead and resign early so that the people that really want to be there, perhaps they're not impacted as much. Back in February, over 700 employees from the Public Building Service, they accepted the DRP. That's about 13% that already left that office. Now, the GSA, they have really ambitious plans when it comes to cuts and their workload. They want to cut pretty much everything in half by 50%. But they also, at the same time, simultaneously, they want to increase their workload. So that seems like a recipe for burnout. We're going to have to wait to see how that plays out. GSA is also consolidating offices. There's a published list of locations. You got cities like Washington, D.C., Chicago, and other metropolitan areas. They're going to shut down other offices, the majority of offices, especially in the rural areas, because their vision with this is they want to keep offices open where talent is around, where people can commute in. So that means metropolitan areas. If you are a GSA worker and you are working at one of the more rural locations or one of the more smaller locations, you're probably going to get an email if you haven't already telling you you're going to have to move to a different location. And if you're not willing to, well, you're going to have to look for a different job. Next up is the Small Business Administration. The SBA is all about small business, loans, disaster help. Last weekend, they told their employees the DRP's back open until April 7th. This time, it's all hands on deck. Everyone's invited to the party. They also have ambitious plans to cut the agency by 43% of their current workforce. That's over 2,000 jobs. They're hoping that enough people resign so the RIFs aren't as impactful. They even dropped an FAQ, a frequently asked questions, but this is essentially the same deal. You keep your full pay, your full benefits, you keep accruing leave, you keep contributing to your TSP all the way until September 30th. Next, we have the IRS. Last Friday, they dropped some news. 50 senior IT leaders, they were placed on paid administrative leave. They were told to go home, do not work, do not open your laptop, await further guidance. That further guidance, that will be a layoff. They will be getting laid off more than likely. IRS is looking at a bigger plan. They want to cut their IT workforce by 50%. Now, usually, we look at IT specialists or individuals that work with computer science and things of that nature, we view them as safe or more safe than the administrative folks, than other type of government workers. But here we're looking at 4,000 people within the IRS with IT backgrounds. They could be lost. They could be cut. But there are some jobs that are probably safe, and that would include cybersecurity, application developers, and network folks. An anonymous source said that these IT leaders, they lacked the expertise in order to be proficient at the IT systems that the IRS was either working on currently or that they're moving towards. The Department of Treasury also greenlit their VERA, the Voluntary Early Retirement Authority, to encourage more people to head towards the exit and leave that agency. Now, you're probably not going to get 50% though. So what I'm thinking is they need to introduce or to roll out the deferred resignation program. We're seeing other agencies doing it. They want to encourage people to leave. There's going to be a huge rift to impact the IRS, and they're not hiring for the rest of the year. So I think it's only a matter of time before we see the deferred resignation program roll out for the IRS as well. Okay, then we have the Department of Defense. Last Friday, the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, said they're reopening the deferred resignation program and early retirement. It seems like everything was happening last Friday. It seemed like all the agencies kind of synced up and say, hey, let's do this on Friday. Anyway, they're reopening it because their overall plan is to cut DoD between 5 to 8%. So you're looking at numbers up to 60,000 workers they want gone. And this is a good way to do it because last time they opened it up, they had, I believe, over 30,000 people from the DoD accepted. Now, why are they doing this? To make the president happy? Maybe, but the official reason is to refocus resources on warfighters. Hegseth is now pushing for max participants. Last time there were a lot of exempt jobs. The same thing with other agencies. There were a lot of jobs that they were trying to shield saying you can't resign. It looks like they're trying to be more open with that. They want more people to self-select out of the agency. And when the rifts come, if not enough people accepted it, if not enough people resigned on their own free will, the rifts will probably impact a certain segment of that population. Now, they've already fired hundreds, I think it was a little over 200 probationary workers that they have still not reinstated by the time of this video. By the time that I'm recording this right now, they haven't reinstated them, even though a federal judge says they need to be reinstated. And reinstatement doesn't mean paid administrative leave. Reinstatement means back to the cubicle farm and working. Part of DoD's RIF plan is to consolidate their duplicate jobs, automate more tasks, and reduce their headquarters. The headquarters is essentially the Pentagon, so they want to reduce the workforce in there. Also, the hiring freeze they had in place, it was naturally reducing 6,000 jobs per month. So the secretary came out recently and they said there was a hiring freeze. He was the only exemption authority. Then he delegated that responsibility to his subordinate leaders. So now there's more exemptions when it comes to hiring. So people are still getting hired, but the attrition rate is higher than the onboarding rate. Now, should you take the DRP? Maybe. It depends. Where are you at in life? How does your financial health? Can you get another job quickly or in a reasonable amount of time? There were a lot of federal workers, I believe, that were ready to ride out the storm. But every week that goes by, the conditions that they're working in, you've seen a survey that came out, over 5,000 people, they're talking about the conditions. People are getting, crammed into a conference room. Buildings are somewhat crumbling around them. The working conditions are not the best. Let's just say that. Okay, so you have that. You have back to work 5 days a week, which hasn't happened in decades. Before the pandemic, people were teleworking. So now you have a new version of traffic that Washington, D.C. has never seen before. So maybe all of that is getting to you and wearing on you mentally, and you're ready to check out. People could take it for that. But the deal is, this DRP that we're seeing right now, it's worse than February because 2 months of pay, that's off the table. So instead of getting the 8 months, you're instead of getting 6 months, or probably less than 6 months. So let's just do a quick thought experiment. You're a worker in DC. You're making, let's say, net 8,000 a month. Okay, so you're probably a GS-14. 8,000 a month. So how much was that worth, getting 8,000 a month? If you took the deal in February, well, that's probably worth $56,000 to include FERS credit, to include your leave. If you take it now, that's only worth $40,000. So that's a difference of $16,000. The total amount would probably exceed VSIP, which is $25,000, and that's tax, so it's really $18,000. Now, if you're a GS7 or a GS9, the math would probably look a whole lot different, and maybe the VSIP is more appealing to you. But if you do decide to take it, you need to make sure that you're making copies of your SF50, your performance appraisals. You have all the username and passwords to get into your TSP, to get into your HR systems, or whatever you need. Make sure you have all of that before your last day. And with the deferred resignation program right now, most federal employees are holding on to their ID until the last day. The last day, which would be September 30th, that is when you turn in your ID, and then you're allowed to get your last paycheck, and they cash out your leave. So you get that as well. We might also see more federal agencies participating in the deferred resignation program before the rifts hit fully throughout the summer months. So you can be prepared for that. If you're a federal employee, you haven't been in the government long, you should understand by now. There's still people that don't get this. So I just want to say it one more time for you. 5 years, you're fully vested. So that's a number that you have to keep in the back of your mind when you're making these decisions. Do you have 5 years in? If you don't have 5 years in, maybe it might be in your best interest to wait for your 5-year mark, because then you're fully vested, and at the age of 62, you can start collecting an annuity, a small pension. Now, let's say you're a GS-14 in DC or a GS-13. That amount is not going to be much, but it could be $400, $500, $600 a month, $700 a month if you're earning, if you're on the higher end of the step level. So if you're GS-14, step 7, step 8, could be $700, $800 a month. And that money is separate from Social Security. So it's another stream of revenue that could help you in retirement. Now, if you want to have a better understanding of the hiring freeze and exactly what's happening in the federal government as far as people applying to jobs or people that have questions about, is the RIF going to impact them? I did a live stream recently, answered over a dozen questions. If you're interested in that, I want you to watch this next. Stay updated by signing up to the free newsletter down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.